Hi, I'm Josh Hooks. I'm a solution architect with Cumulocity IoT, and in this video, I'm going to show you an example of how you can unlock data within Cumulocity IoT by integrating it with AWS services. And to do that, we'll follow this simple diagram where we're taking data that's coming from connected devices and connected applications, pushing it through device management for bidirectional control of those devices, and then using streaming analytics to contextualize and enrich this information, create alarms, create events that we will visualize using Cockpit, using our easy-to-use drag and drop widget library. And really the focus of this video will be on the right-hand side of this diagram, using DataHub to offload that data to S3, and then using Glue and Athena to structure that data, make it easy to query for applications like QuickSight. QuickSight building a report can then be integrated back into Cumulocity within Cockpit to give those end users a very seamless experience when they're visualizing data. So to show you that, let's start off in a Cumulocity tenant. And within this tenant, I'm in a dashboard that comes sort of pre-installed when you install the sensor application on the App Store that connects through Cumulocity and registers a device, your phone in this case, through a QR code. And you can see as I move my phone around, you'll see the rotation of the phone through things like the gyroscope and the accelerometers displayed on this graph at the bottom. And so really we're just focusing on these measurements coming from the accelerometer. And you see these labeled as C8Y underscore acceleration. And I'm calling that out specifically because we'll use that later. So as these are coming in, they're being stored in the database within Cumulocity, but that's not where I want them completely. I want them here and I want them in AWS. So to do that, I'll go to the application switcher on the top right and load up DataHub in a new tab. And DataHub is going to be the tool that we'll use to offload that data. And so within DataHub, what you'll end up doing is going into this initial configuration and within AWS, specifically within IAM, set up a role that you can get an access key and a secret key, and then label a bucket name and the root path in the bucket name within S3 that you want to push this data off to. So my bucket name will be NAM IoT COE, which is good to remember because we'll use that later as well. And then when I go into my offloading screen, I'll be able to offload any of the data within Cumulocity. So if I click on plus offload collection, you'll see things like the different collection types, different data points that you can send. So in this case, I want measurements because that's my real-time accelerometer information that I'm getting from my phone. And if I click next, it'll let me select the measurement type. And so as I go down, you see a lot of different stuff, but I called out C8Y acceleration explicitly because that's what we have to pick from this list. It'll give you a target table name and then go through a few other tasks to show you what that table is going to look like. And since this is going to take a little bit of time, I'll show you something that is a configuration offloading configuration that is pre-made. So if I go through and click next a few times, we'll see exactly what that looks like. And at this point, it's sort of looking for additional column information to say that it's looking through every single measurement available that is an acceleration measurement and seeing if I have extended the data model in any way. Cumulocity does set what the data model should look like, but lets you extend it with any sort of contextual company information that you think would be relevant for your use case, so we don't just lock you into one way that measurements should look. There's a lot of different ways that I have used measurements. In this case, I'm not really selecting any other things. I'm also not using filter predicates, but you could limit it to a certain device, a certain time that the measurements may have shown up. And as you click through next, you'll see this data that is a preview of what all of your data is going to look like. So you'll just see column formats where you saw before, where we had that C8Y acceleration, acceleration Z, X, and Y values and units coming in columnar format. So now that this is offloaded, which happens every hour, let's jump over to AWS. In AWS, our first landing point is S3. So now I have an S3 bucket here called NAM IoT COE. If I click on this and drill down one further, I'll see a bunch of T somethings. So if I quickly jump back into my Cumulocity tenant and click on the top right, you'll see that that is a tenant ID associated with the tenant that I'm in within Cumulocity. Ends in 263. If I jump back to S3, I'll look for the one that ends in 263. And I can now see all of my offloading And within DataHub, I had this measurement CY acceleration offloading task. So that's where it puts the data. And now you're going to see that all of this is in Parquet format. So not really human readable, not really something that I would want to click into each of these. But if I did, you'll see it's just a bunch of compressed information. So it's taking the time series JSONs, compressing them to Parquet. So they're very cheap and easy to store, but not really easy to read. And that's where Glue comes in. So if I jump to my next tab, I'll go to AWS Glue, where at the left-hand side here, you can see I'm in the crawlers. Crawlers are very easy to set up for Parquet. In this case, I just have an S3 Parquet crawler, which has been set up by just defining the data source. So when you go into create a new crawler, you'll, I'm not really using this one, so I'll just call it test123, adding a data source. And in this case, I'm browsing S3, just clicking on NAM IoT COE, or if I wanted to go specifically down in the same way I did within S3, I could click the measurements as well, choose that, and then run the crawler. And running this crawler, which again takes some time, so I'll skip over it, allows you to create a structure that's more easily used by Athena. And so Athena is a good way to then query this data that you've then crawled through and converted to a format that's more human readable. So if I jump over to Athena, I now have my database of NAM IoT COE JHooks. And if I scroll down through the tables, I'll see a bunch of stuff that I won't really care about that I've played with before, but specifically this T something something that ends in 263, the tenant ID of Cumulocity. And in here, I have a bunch of information that looks very similar to what I saw in that DataHub preview. So then if I preview this table, you'll see something that looks basically exactly like what was in DataHub, that columnar format of all the data that came with these measurements that were coming directly off of my phone. So I put it onto S3, I've crawled through the data to make it easy to query, use Athena to query it, but really what I want to see is in QuickSight. So let me jump to QuickSight to the different analysis that I have. So in this case, I'm going to create a brand new analysis. And within this analysis, I do have a data set, but I am going to set up a brand new data set. And in that data set, I want to select Athena because that's what I just set up. And so we'll just use a throwaway name for this, like test321, create the data source, and then look through the specific set of tables that I want to visualize information for. So in this, I have NAM IoT COE JHooks, just like I did with Athena directly. Then I can scroll down through here to get the tenant ID, select this, we'll directly query the data for this, and then click visualize. And I'm not too worried about playing with QuickSight too much. I just want to make sure I have some sort of graph that I can use. So I'm just going to start clicking on the different acceleration values and then click on a timestamp, so time. And QuickSight's pretty good about being intelligent enough to give me a graph that makes sense for that. So in that case, now I have an analysis. So let's publish that. And we'll publish that as, again, to test321. Publish dashboard. And then now we have a dashboard that we can use within QuickSight, completely usable within AWS or any other services that can embed this dashboard. One of those services being Cumulocity IoT. So let's share this dashboard and then copy the embed code. So now I have this in my clipboard. Let's go back to Cumulocity. In Cumulocity, I'll sit on the same dashboard that I did for my iPhone, but we'll create a new dashboard specifically for QuickSight that will show up in the top menu. So let's save this. And to embed, we'll use an HTML widget that'll allow us to embed an iframe and just copy and paste the code. And so the height will be a little weird, so I'm going to change that to like 1080 and then make this a little bigger. And actually change the width to be 100%. So it fills the widget. So now you'll see a representation and a completely interactable graph that I had from QuickSight located within Cumulocity. So then I can go to my real-time data here, where I'm getting real-time information about my phone's accelerometer and different sensors, and then my QuickSight dashboard, which will give me historical information going back to as far as I ever had connected this, which in this case was much earlier this year. So that's just a general way of how we make this workflow happen. Like I said, this is just one example of how you get things into QuickSight and QuickSight into Cumulocity, but at this point you have unlocked data within AWS to use within any AWS service or integrate with any other application as well.